Hey guys, how's it going? So first of all, I just kind of want to welcome you guys to the first episode of a little YouTube series that I'm doing. Basically, we're going to be refurbishing these sun boxes here, and I'll go into a little detail about why and what's wrong with them later. Um, but first, let's go into a little backstory. So, as you can see, these two at least are some pretty big servers. There's Sunfire V890s, and then these are two Sunblade 150s. So I picked these up on Craigslist this weekend, which is kind of a weird place to find Sun servers actually. But anyways, the guy had ended up buying them from a Office Depot auction, and Office Depot was basically selling off a bunch of these. They're called Xerox iGen 3 digital production presses. They're basically super printers. They print, flyers, magazines, or whatever at extremely high speeds and extremely high quality. Um, from what I understand, the V890 is kind of the brain of the whole production press system. It did the actual printing, and then the Blade 150 would have just been the user interface to the system. Um, from what I can gather, this is actually two sets from two separate Xerox iGen 3 production press systems. From what I can gather in the documentation, that's what it looks like, anyways. It would seem really weird if one single Xerox machine or system needed two servers for that. It actually surprises me that it even needs one of these. I mean, these are pretty beefy sun boxes. You would think it would be able to get away with, like a 490 or something, but there are quite a lot of PCI cards in these boxes down here, so maybe they just needed the I/O. Okay, so here's the first Blade 150 we're gonna look at. It's a little dirty, as you can tell. So the first thing you want to do, just as kind of a rule of thumb, get two cups ready. I've already pulled the two screws out of the back of the case, mostly because the rust has gotten to the point to where the screws basically have no threads to screw into anymore, so they almost fall out a little bit, so that's a bad sign. But so I keep all the screws in one cup. The other cup will be something else, but you're gonna want some Heinz. It doesn't matter if it's Heinz or not, but distilled white vinegar. The food grade stuff generally works better. The cleaning grade stuff is watered down. Just rule of thumb. Rubbing alcohol works great. A toothbrush doesn't have to be a new one. I just picked one up because I didn't have one. Scotch-Brite pads. These are the sponge and pad combo. They work really well. I like the non-scratch because they don't scratch the case up too bad. And some Dawn. You don't always need the Dawn, but occasionally you do if you've got a bunch of residues and stuff. So these screws are a little rusty, so we're going to use vinegar to get rust off. If I can just open this stupid bottle. There we go. Alright, and we're just going to fill a little bit in there. And we'll just let that sit. Every screw we take out from now on, we're just going to throw in the vinegar. We shouldn't need this for a little while now. And we're going to fill the other cup up with some rubbing alcohol. Come on. We have to protect the children. Oh, wow, there's another layer there. All right. Okay, this should be enough to work with, at least for now. It takes a little bit of time for the vinegar to kind of absorb. Actually, I'm going to set these under the camera. It'll be safer there. Yeah, so it takes a little bit of time for the vinegar to kind of deteriorate any rust on those screws. But all right, let's go ahead and get this case off. Does it pull all the way back? No. There we go. Looks like you gotta wedge it. All right, case is off, and surprisingly, it doesn't look all that bad in there. course, there's dust. Fan spins okay. Let's go ahead and get a little closer look at the back so you kind of know more what we're dealing with. So it looks like most of this is surface. I'm going to hope the camera focuses. Yeah, it looks good. So most of this is probably surface rust. We've got quite a bit built up on the serial port there, but that should be cleaned up. There's some corrosion in there, but again, we can probably clean that up. Alright. It's definitely not pretty, but based on how the inside doesn't look all that bad, it's probably doable. So I'm going to go ahead and start tearing it apart. That's probably the first step. So we're going to empty out the whole inside, and then clean up the motherboard with rubbing alcohol, vinegar, all the rust off of the case, probably disassemble the power supply and make sure it's good, test some of the other stuff, and once it's all cleaned up, we'll put her back together. To get these things apart, you don't need a whole lot of tools if you've worked on servers or any computer before. These Sun blades are pretty standard, but Sun likes to do a few special things, so I find a good multi-tool is useful and some screwdrivers. Okay, so I decided to kind of spare you guys the 30 minutes of me trying to figure out how to take the stupid thing apart. Turns out it's all on sleds. I'm sitting here trying to find the screws, and the screws are pretty much impossible to get to with all the sleds in, and it turns out that everything's on sleds. It just didn't come apart very easy, or it didn't look like they were on sleds, because you can see all this nice rust down on the bottom that was binding the main motherboard tray to the bottom of the chassis, which doesn't look very good. I thought that was bad news, but it looks like it's mostly isolated to the tray, which means we should hopefully have a salvageable motherboard. So let's go ahead and finish taking the motherboard off. There's the tray. There's a bug in the tray. That's good. But yeah, see, the motherboard actually looks pretty clean. I was worried about all this. This is where you normally start to see bad stuff happening, but it looks okay. So let's get everything cleaned up. We'll start with the motherboard. It's probably the easiest. Okay, so we got the motherboard over here in the sink. We're gonna try not to use any water. Sometimes you have to. I really should have bought some distilled water, but I forgot. So we're just gonna use this toothbrush and some rubbing alcohol. The rubbing alcohol evaporates pretty quick, and it won't really damage the boards or anything, but you'll see it really kind of helps clean out the dust and such. It's just not the greatest rinsing agent, so that's where the distilled water would have come in handy. We'll actually just do this on the edge here. So we got the RAM stick here. You can go ahead and do the same thing with this, really. Like I said, rubbing alcohol is not going to hurt any of these electronics. You really want to make sure you clean, at the very least, the contacts as good as possible. Alright, that should just about do it. So we're going to set this board up to dry now. And in a few hours, we should be ready to at least put it back together. Let's go ahead and address the rest of the system. Okay, so you can kind of see the vinegar's actually done a really good job. It still looks like crap, but compared to what we started with, this is fairly minimal. So I've already kind of started doing this here, but I'm just taking a rotary tool. This is some cheap Harbor Freight one, but you can use a Dremel or whatever, and just kind of sanding out the rust that has penetrated too deep into the metal. And as you can tell right here, it comes out pretty good. So let me continue to keep doing that. That came out pretty good, actually. You can see there's a relatively even finish. I kind of want to go over it with something a bit bigger so I can make sure it's all uniform and looks good. But doing this for a while, this is probably like, an hour and a half, just this. I started touching the inside as well. As you can see, I'm cleaning up that rust and stuff down in there. But what I found out is that once you start getting back into these corners, it's really difficult to fit the Dremel in there. And having that look that bad is almost unacceptable to me still. So what I think I'm gonna do um, is go to the store, probably buy a gallon or two more of vinegar, and something big enough to set this whole assembly in, and just literally let the whole assembly soak for an hour or two, maybe 3 hours in vinegar, and then come back in with the um, with like sponges or Brillo pads or something and kind of clean the rest of it up. Otherwise, it's just not going to look as good as I want it to look. So um, I'm gonna go to the store, grab that, and then probably set up in my garage so you guys can see the whole thing be dunked, and hopefully that'll take care of the rust. As you can see, all the major stuff's gone, right? This is almost perfect, um, and there's pretty good. So this should give us the final touches that I think we're gonna need to make it look awesome. I thought about it for a little bit, and I don't think I'm gonna go do that in my garage. I think I'll just go buy the stuff and bring it back here to the office so we can just kind of keep all the parts in one place. Just let me grab a few things here. Um, yeah, so I have a few more pieces to clean. This is the riser board. This one was pretty good, but it doesn't hurt, right? So just gonna give it a quick little cleaning real fast. And then I've also ripped apart the power supplies, which we will clean those as well. Well, if I have anything to say so far, um, it's that whenever you start a project, no matter what, you always run into something you never expected. Like trying to fill an entire, um, whatever this thing is, giant Tupperware container full of vinegar just to get all this rust off. Looks like 1 gallon might cover this one. That's good. Cool. Awesome. So 1 gallon's gonna do it. So yeah, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna let this sit. Or I guess I'm gonna let this sit. Um, and with any luck, in about an hour or two, I should be able to come in with a Brillo pad and just easily get the rest of that rust off. And yeah, so see you guys in an hour. I'm not sure you guys are going to be able to see this very well on camera or not. Well, you definitely get a much better view of the rust right there. But if you look closely, you can see these bubbles rising up from the areas where there's rust. And that's the vinegar or acetic acid reacting with it and causing it to break down and come free from the steel or whatever this is. I would imagine it's some form of steel. It obviously has to be iron based uh, if it's rusting, right? Yeah, it's starting to come off already a little bit. It's only been in there for about a few minutes, so yeah, let's let it sit for a little bit. All right, guys. So it's been, I don't know, probably at least an hour, letting stuff soak in the vinegar. You can see quite a big difference actually. You kind of see these outlines. That's where the rust would have been, and now it's basically perfectly clean. It'll also kind of the vinegar will eat away the galvanized coating on this too. So do keep that in mind. The longer you let it sit in there, it does take a while for that to happen, but it does happen eventually. Okay, that should work a little bit better. So as you can see, a lot of this just comes off now. Literally just brush it with a toothbrush and it's gone, which is really useful. And now this thing isn't going to look like it's been sitting in a shed its whole life. There's a lot of stuff still on the bottom there, but yeah, it's starting to look a lot better now. So I think I'm just going to kind of brush on it a little bit, probably let it soak for a little bit longer, then we'll come back to it again. Okay, so if you look like around here, you'll start to see some surface rust already regenerating. It's literally, this thing has only been out of the vinegar tub for like 5 minutes and it's already there. So it starts happening really quick. And eventually it gets uncontrollable. So what you want to do is just take a little bit of WD-40, um, spray it onto a sponge or whatever, and you just coat it. And the sponge should, in theory, wipe a lot of that up. If it's hard to get, you can use towels or whatever. I've already done the back side of it just so you can kind of see how it comes out. So it'll come out nice and perfect once you get a nice coat of WD-40 on there. I need to go down in that crack as well, but yeah, so that's how it, hopefully, I mean, if you look at this now, it's starting to look incredibly better than it did before. And for the really tough pit spots, I've just been using this hand sander. It's working out really well. So I'm going to keep on keeping on. Alright, so it looks like we got most of this done anyway. So there's the back panel. All the rust cleaned off, nice and clean. I've kind of re-scrubbed or sanded this the part where the motherboard tray slides in because it was kind of a little rough. We have a little rough spot still up in here. You can actually see back here better. Here's the front, as you can see, also nice and clean. If we get back in here, you see those dark spots in there. It's not actually rust. It's just there might actually be a little bit of rust in there, but it's mostly pitting because that was where some really bad rust had been. And you know, you got little red corners here and there where you can't really get a rag or something to kind of scrape at it with. But considering where we were and now we're at this point, I think we're doing pretty good. So I think it's time to start putting her back together. Okay, so the rebuild is coming along. Got the left side drives in place, the fan, motherboard, the whole tray's in. I want to clean up that sticker a little bit with some of that goo gone right there, but we're getting there. It's all coming along. The riser's in place, so most of the hard stuff's done. One thing I wanted to show you guys, this is something that I usually do on everything that I own computer-wise, but this is the heatsink that comes with it. It's pretty small. The UltraSpark 2i. See if I can focus that. There you go. That's the processor that's in this box, which is a really not very powerful processor, unfortunately. But you know, it is what it is. Anyway, so it has a really cheap thermal pad here. I've already scraped most of it off. I would say that this actually looks really similar to a Pentium 3, like not the, obviously it's got more, you know, metal surface area, but just chip size and pin layout and heatsink wise, it looks very similar. Anyways, so one thing I want to show you was this Arctic Clean thermal material remover, and it also comes with the thermal surface purifier. I like to put Arctic Silver 5 on pretty much everything that I use for the most part, and this stuff helps you get absolutely anything off. This is not a paid product placement or anything. It just absolutely works incredibly. In fact, I think this might even be Goo Gone in a different bottle. It's possible. It smells the same, but anyway. So all you do is you just kind of squirt this on here, and you'll see it just starts to work instantly. See how it just starts smearing? It's beautiful. You let that sit for just a few minutes, wipe it off with a paper towel. We'll do the same to the actual top of the processor too, because it's got a little bit of residue on there. Not a lot actually though. And then you just come in here with a towel, or paper towel, and just kind of wipe everything up. And it takes off almost all of it. This is a thermal pad, so it's really difficult. I need to scrape that a little more. But you get the idea. The purifier stuff might just be rubbing alcohol. So that might be interesting to try sometime. It might just be Goo Gone and rubbing alcohol in smaller bottles. You know, Goo Gone, rubbing alcohol. But who knows? Anyways, just wanted to point that out. I'm going to keep building. Alright guys, looks like she's all together. and she looks a whole lot nicer than she did when we first started. Here's the worst part. If you all remember what this looked like, this is how it all looks now. Unfortunately, we had to get rid of all the nice informational stickers that were all over the place back here, like towards the bottom and over there on the side, but it looks a hell of a lot nicer than rust all over the place, that's for sure. Let's show you the front real quick. Oop, don't want to break it. Here we're looking at the front. Cleaned up all the drives, removed all the rust. She's looking pretty good. So I'm going to slap the cover back on, clean things up a little bit, and we'll take her for a test run. Okay guys, so it's been about 14 total hours, and finally we're ready to test whether the Sunblade 150 is going to boot up or not. So we got a monitor plugged in, keyboard plugged in, should be everything you need to get it to at least boot. So let's see how it goes. Moment of truth. Well, that's not good. It's all jarbled. Okay, so as you can see, we've got something not so good going on here. Honestly, I'm surprised it gets this far, considering how rough a shape it was in. But it boots. You can watch it go through the OS. You can't read anything about what it's actually doing, but you can watch it boot. Just because the screen's all jumbled up. So either that's probably a bad video card, could be bad VRAM, could be bad regular RAM, could be a bad CPU, could be a lot of different things that could cause something like this to happen. So what I'm going to do is grab the motherboard out of the other Sunblade 150 and just swap this one out and see if I can get a little bit of better results going just with that motherboard. Okay, so I swapped out the motherboard with the other Sunblade 150, and you can see we've got nice crisp display, so that's good. So I guess now I gotta clean up this other motherboard. Oh, that'll be fun. Well, guys, looks like we booted into the Solaris installation disk, and everything seems to work good. Well, this has been a long video for me. Um, I'm not sure if it's going to end up being long on YouTube, but I've probably been up for about 15 to 16 hours straight working on this. So let's just get one final once over everything, just so we can see how it all turned out. Alright, so here's the Sunblade running, still running just the same installation program. Actually, this could be cleaned up a little bit more, but it's not too bad. But yeah, everything's pretty nice and tidy, a lot nicer than it was. Like I showed you earlier, all the rust is gone off the back. So are all the labels, but you take what you can get. Here's the other Sunblade, by the way. Try to excuse the terrible mess right now. It's just been such a long day, I haven't had time to clean it up. So that's roughly what I started with. This one's a little bit better off than the other one was. But yeah, I'll probably just rip some of the parts out of this, set them aside, and then scrap this chassis. I'll probably, any of the nicer stuff I'll put into the Sunblade over here. No point in having two of them if only one motherboard is good. So that'll save me some time, actually, because I really wasn't looking forward to fixing this one, considering how long this one took. I'm much more interested in working on those two things. So in retrospect, I actually should have just started with these here. I'll go over here so you guys can actually see what I'm dealing with without making too much of a mess. But the V890s really aren't that bad. So like the worst you see here, like actually this one's got almost nothing. There's just a little bit of surface rust there. The back is all good. I think these fared off considerably better, just because, like I said, they're elevated about an inch off the ground. That one, if I remember right, is just a little bit worse. Yeah, so the back on this one's all clean. Um, got a little bit of surface rust on these power supplies down here, but not too big of a deal. Um, the front's about the same, really, so I've got a big mess to clean up before employees come in this morning. But yeah, so if you've stuck around and watched this whole thing through and through, I greatly appreciate it. So please stay tuned for the next episode where I'll start looking at the V890s. Until then, I'm gonna go clean up this mess, or this mess, and then probably gut that thing out and set the parts aside. So alright, you guys take it easy. Thank you.